It's 4:42 a.m. on September 12th, 2024, and while the rest of North London sleeps, a teenager sits alone in the darkness of his bedroom, scrolling through images from the Columbine massacre. The blue light from his computer screen illuminates his face as he clicks through photo after photo. Crime scene images that would make seasoned detectives pause, manifestos written by killers he idolizes, tactical breakdowns of where previous shooters went wrong. This isn't the first time he's done this. It's become a nightly ritual, a twisted preparation for what he believes will be his moment of infamy. In just over an hour, 19-year-old Nicholas Prosper will walk into his family's hallway and commit an act so horrific it will send shockwaves through the entire nation. But the most chilling part? His mother, brother and sister are sleeping just rooms away, completely unaware that they're sharing their home with someone who's already decided they need to die. To understand how a teenager becomes capable of murdering his entire family, we need to travel back to Luton, a town that sits just north of London like an unwanted relative at a family gathering, close enough to feel the capital's pulse, but far enough away to be forgotten. Once upon a time, Luton thrived with its hat-making industry and Vauxhall car production. The town even had its moment in aviation history with Luton Airport. Those glory days are now as distant as black and white photographs gathering dust in antique shops. Walk through the town centre today, and you'll see what decades of economic decline look like. Boarded up shops standing like tombstones to better times, pound stores multiplying like weeds through concrete cracks, and a general sense that prosperity packed its bags and never returned. The town has one of Britain's most diverse populations, bringing rich culture and character. But diversity without opportunity creates tension like friction between tectonic plates, and Luton has become a pressure point for social, political and religious conflicts. Extremism has found fertile ground here, gang activity has woven itself into the fabric of daily life, and knife crime statistics read like a horror story nobody wants to acknowledge. Many across the UK see Luton as a place to avoid, not visit. A cautionary tale of urban decay dressed up as multiculturalism. Yet families still wake up each morning, send their kids to school, and try to carve out something resembling normalcy from the chaos. In one of these families was Nicholas Prosper, born December 18, 2005, into a world that would soon fracture. His parents divorced when he was just 4 years old. Imagine being that young and watching your world split in two like a piece of paper torn down the middle. His mother, Juliana Falcon, kept the family together in their modest apartment in Enfield, North London, with Nicholas and his two younger siblings, Kyle and Jazelle. To outsiders peering through windows, they looked like any other working-class family navigating life's challenges. But inside that apartment, something was slowly going wrong. Teachers at Nicholas's school would later describe him as academically capable but painfully withdrawn. Picture a student who sits in the back corner of every classroom, not because he's rebellious, but because he genuinely doesn't know how to connect with the human beings around him. He was like a ghost haunting his own life, present, but never really there. While other teenagers were discovering music, sports, or first relationships, Nicholas was discovering something far darker in the depths of the internet. The warning signs started early, though they were easy to dismiss as typical teenage behaviour. Nicholas would spend entire weekends in his room, emerging only for meals. When family members tried to engage him in conversation, he'd respond with monosyllables, his eyes already drifting back to his bedroom door like a compass pointing north. His mother Juliana noticed the changes. Mothers always do. But what could she attribute them to? Teenage hormones? The stress of his parents' divorce finally catching up? Every explanation seemed plausible, and none suggested the horror that was actually taking root. The internet is humanity's greatest tool and its most dangerous weapon, depending on whose hands hold it. For most of us, it's a library, a shopping mall, a social club. For Nicholas, it became a portal to places no human mind should venture. By 2023, he wasn't just viewing disturbing content, he was drowning in it, gulping down toxicity like a man dying of thirst in a poisoned oasis. We're talking about material so vile that multiple websites banned him after he expressed his desires openly in forums. His fascination extended beyond human victims to animals and corpses. This wasn't curiosity anymore, it was addiction to the absolute worst humanity has to offer. Think of the internet like an ocean. Most of us swim in the shallows, social media, news sites, streaming services, the occasional deep dive into Wikipedia at 2 a.m. Some venture deeper for specialized knowledge or niche communities. But Nicholas, he found trenches so dark that light itself seems to die there, places where the worst of humanity congregates to share their sickness, like a disease spreading through a digital petri dish. He studied mass shootings like other teens study for exams, creating detailed notes and timelines. Sandy Hook, Columbine, Virginia Tech. These weren't tragedies to him. They were blueprints, instruction manuals written in blood. He memorized body counts like sports statistics, analyzed tactical failures like a military strategist critiquing a battle, and participated in forums where killers are celebrated like rock stars. In these dark corners of the web, he found others like him, people who spoke of high scores when referring to death tolls, who shared crime scene photos like trading cards, who offered advice on everything from weapon selection to manifesto writing. Nicholas absorbed it all with the dedication of a scholar preparing a dissertation, except his thesis would be written in violence. In one video he posted online, Nicholas wore a black and yellow outfit, his chosen uniform for infamy. The colour scheme was deliberate, meant to be memorable, iconic even. He practiced poses in his mirror, adjusting angles like an influencer preparing content, except his content was meant to inspire fear, not follows. He didn't just admire these killers, he wanted to surpass them. His goal was specific and calculated, 34 deaths, enough to exceed the Virginia Tech massacre. He even chose his date with theatrical precision, Friday, September 13th, 2024. Because apparently, regular mass murder wasn't dramatic enough without the Friday the 13th branding. But here's where Nicholas's story takes an even more bizarre turn into the realm of complete delusion. Among all his violent obsessions, one stood out as particularly disturbing: his fixation on Clementine, a fictional character from the Walking Dead video game series. Now, being a fan of a video game character isn't unusual. What was unusual was that Nicholas believed she was real, or at least real enough to need his protection in the physical world. He wrote about her in journals like she was a living person who needed his protection, filling pages with elaborate fantasies about their relationship. He saw himself as her chosen guardian, her saviour, her vengeful angel ready to punish anyone who wronged her, even in a virtual space. The journal entries, discovered after his arrest, read like the manifesto of someone completely detached from reality. He wrote letters to Clementine, promising to protect her, to avenge her, to ensure no one would ever hurt her again. Remember, Clementine is portrayed as a child in the game, and knowing Nicholas's other interests, the illegal images found on his devices, well, the implications make your skin crawl. When his sister played the game and made choices that resulted in violence occurring in front of Clementine's character, Nicholas flew into a genuine rage. In his twisted mind, his sister had committed an unforgivable sin against someone he loved. While Nicholas spiraled deeper into his digital abyss, his mother Juliana was fighting a different battle entirely. Being a single parent is like juggling flaming torches while walking a tightrope. One wrong move and everything falls apart. She worked full-time to keep food on the table and a roof over their heads, coming home exhausted to face the second shift of parenting. She noticed her son becoming more distant, more difficult to reach, like he was slowly fading from the family photo while still physically present. Conversations became interrogations met with silence. Family dinners turned into Nicholas eating quickly and disappearing back to his room. Both Juliana and Nicholas's father Raymond tried desperately to get him help. Despite their divorce, they came together in concern for their son. They referred him to mental health services where autism was suspected. His difficulty with social situations, his resistance to change, his intense focus on specific interests all pointed in that direction. But autism doesn't make someone violent. Millions of people with autism live peaceful, productive lives. No, what Nicholas had was something far darker hiding behind any diagnosis. When professionals tried to help, he resisted completely. He didn't want to be fixed because in his mind, nothing was broken. Everyone else was the problem. By June 2023, Nicholas had given up any pretense of normal life. He stopped attending classes at college, missing so many days that expulsion was inevitable. He'd briefly worked at a local supermarket, but even that minimal human interaction proved too much. He was fired within months. His world shrank to the size of his bedroom, lit only by the glow of his computer screen. Hours turned into days, days into weeks. all blending together in an endless cycle of violent content consumption and planning. The reconnaissance phase began with frightening precision. Nicholas called St. Joseph's Catholic Primary School, his own former school, pretending to be a parent asking about schedules. His voice was calm, interested, asking about drop-off times, lunch schedules when the children played outside. He studied their website with the intensity of a scholar, but instead of learning, he was targeting. He saved photos of pupils and teachers to his hard drive, organising them into folders, collecting faces like trophies he hadn't won yet. His handwritten notes included detailed classroom layouts with entry and exit points marked, blind spots identified, and the chilling words "kill" all scrawled beside them like a signature on a painting. The detail in his planning was obsessive. He researched which classrooms held the youngest children. They would be easier targets, less likely to fight back or escape quickly. He studied the school's lockdown procedures, looking for weaknesses. He even checked social media accounts of teachers, learning their routines, their habits, when they arrived early or stayed late. Getting a gun in the UK isn't like America. It requires licenses, background checks, legitimate reasons. The Firearms Act of 1968 and subsequent amendments make it incredibly difficult for civilians to obtain firearms. So Nicholas did what any determined criminal would do. He forged the documents. Using online templates and careful study of legitimate certificates, he created a convincing fake. A fake signature here, a false address there, claims of membership at a shooting club that never verified members, and suddenly he's approved to purchase a shotgun for clay pigeon shooting. The fact that this actually worked represents a systematic failure that should terrify everyone. September 11th, 2024, a date already etched in history for different reasons. Nicholas takes possession of his shotgun and 2 boxes of cartridges containing 33 rounds total. That evening, while his family sleeps peacefully in their beds, Nicholas sits at his computer researching shotgun injuries to the neck. The search queries, recovered from his browser history, are specific and methodical. Shotgun wound survival rate, point-blank shotgun damage, fastest death by shotgun. He's not just planning to kill others, he's planning his own grand finale, the dramatic exit that will cement his infamy. His browser history from that night reads like a serial killer's curriculum. Between 11 p.m. on September 11th and 5 a.m. on September 12th, he visited hundreds of pages, case studies of school massacres with particular focus on Sandy Hook and Columbine, reports on high-profile murders including the Sarah Everard case, forums dedicated to mass killers where users rank attacks by body count. He studied police response times to school shootings, looking for that golden window where he could cause maximum damage before intervention. At 4:11 a.m. on September 12th, while the apartment is silent as a tomb, Nicholas switches to even darker content. He watches extreme animated pornography for exactly 31 minutes. At 4:42 a.m, he's looking at photos from school shootings, particularly Columbine. He saves several images to a folder labelled Inspiration. It's like he's performing some sick ritual, baptizing himself in digital horror before his real-world debut. Dawn approaches with deadly certainty. Nicholas loads his shotgun, counts his ammunition twice, and packs everything into a nondescript bag. His plan, detailed in notes found later, was precise. Leave at first light, walk the familiar route to St. Joseph's, arrive just as the school day begins when maximum targets would be present. But at 5 a.m, something unexpected happens. Juliana wakes up early. Maybe it was a mother's intuition, that inexplicable sense that something is terribly wrong with your child. Maybe she heard him moving around and wondered why he was awake so early. Either way, Juliana Falcon woke up and walked into the hallway to find her son dressed and holding a bag that seemed too heavy for its size. We'll never know exactly what words were exchanged in those final moments. What we do know is that Nicholas made a decision that transformed him from a would-be school shooter into a family annihilator. The gunshot that killed Juliana was heard by neighbours through the walls, a sound that would echo in their memories forever. Point-blank range to the face, his own mother, the woman who gave him life, who fed him when he was hungry, who held him when he cried, who loved him despite seeing him slip away into darkness. She died instantly in the hallway of the home she'd worked so hard to maintain. Nicholas then walked to the bookshelf, selected a book with deliberate purpose, and placed it on her legs. Its title, How to Kill Your Family, a sick joke that showed even in murder, He was performing for an audience that existed only in his head. 9-year-old Jazelle woke to the sound that no child should ever hear, gunfire in their own home. Imagine being that young, your biggest worries being homework and friend drama, suddenly seeing your older brother standing over your mother's body with a smoking gun. She ran to the living room, her small feet slipping on the hallway floor, trying to hide behind furniture like this was a nightmare she could wake up from. Nicholas followed methodically, no rush in his movements, like a predator who knows the prey has nowhere to go. He found her crouched behind a sofa, raised the gun to her right eye, looking directly at her, his own sister, and pulled the trigger without hesitation. Kyle, the 16-year-old middle child, heard the shots and made a choice that speaks to incredible bravery. Instead of hiding or trying to escape through a window, he grabbed a kitchen knife. Think about that courage for a moment. A teenage boy, probably terrified, choosing to face an armed killer to protect what was left of his family. Nicholas shot him in the chest, the blast throwing Kyle backward, but it didn't kill him immediately. And then something snapped in Nicholas, something beyond the cold calculation he'd shown so far. He took the knife from Kyle's weakening grip and began stabbing. Not once, not twice, but over 100 times. Each stab wound tells a story of rage that goes beyond planning, beyond logic, beyond even hatred. This wasn't just murder, it was obliteration. The violence was so extreme that multiple knives found at the scene were bent completely out of shape from the force. Kyle's defensive wounds showed he fought back even while being stabbed, refusing to give up. He managed to crawl toward the hallway, perhaps trying to reach his mother, leaving a trail of blood that investigators would later document in horrifying detail. Nicholas ended it with a final shotgun blast to Kyle's head. The entire massacre took less than 30 minutes. 3 lives ended, a family destroyed, all before most people had even woken up for work. At 5:29 a.m, someone, likely a neighbour who heard the gunshots, called emergency services. By 5:33 a.m, just 4 minutes later, surveillance cameras captured Nicholas leaving the building. He had blood on his hands, his clothes, even his glasses, yet he didn't run. He walked calmly, adjusting his bag, like someone heading to catch an early bus. For the next 2 hours, Nicholas played a deadly game of hide-and-seek with fate. He found a cluster of bushes near his flat and crouched there, hidden from view but close enough to watch the police arrive. At 6:22 a.m, while emergency vehicles surrounded his home, he pulled out his phone and posted his pre-recorded video about Clementine to Facebook, because even after murdering his family, he needed to explain himself to an audience of strangers. But something was wrong with his timeline. School hadn't started yet. He was far too early. His original plan had accounted for killing his family later, arriving at school just as classes began. Now he was stuck, a killer without a killing field, watching police swarm the area. At 7:55 a.m, Nicholas made a decision that surprised even investigators. Instead of proceeding to the school, he walked up to a police car on Birmingham Road and raised his hand like he was hailing a taxi. The officers noticed immediately. This young man was covered in blood that was clearly not his own, yet he seemed remarkably calm, almost relieved. "You don't have to say anything," the officer began the standard arrest caution. "Got a murder?" Nicholas interrupted, his tone conversational. Yes, he confirmed when asked again, as casual as someone confirming a dinner reservation. The officers called for backup immediately while keeping Nicholas under close watch. He made no attempt to run, no sudden movements. He simply stood there, blood drying on his skin, waiting to be arrested like this was all part of his plan. Nicholas believed all area schools would be in lockdown because of his family's murders. In his mind, the police had connected the dots, realised a school shooting was imminent, and locked everything down. He thought his grand plan was ruined, so he surrendered. The tragic irony that investigators would later confirm. No schools were locked down. Life was continuing normally, just streets away. Children were arriving for breakfast clubs, teachers were preparing lessons, parents were dropping off their kids completely unaware of how close they'd come to unimaginable tragedy. If Nicholas had proceeded to St. Joseph's instead of surrendering, he might have succeeded in killing dozens of children. Police searched him and found a knife in his pocket, still bloody from the attack on Kyle. They recovered the abandoned shotgun and all 33 remaining cartridges along his route. 2 mobile phones were found discarded in bins, their data later revealing the full extent of his planning. During transport to the station, Nicholas showed no emotion, no panic, no remorse, no mental breakdown that might suggest a psychotic episode. He chatted with officers like they were old friends, even asking if local schools were now in lockdown with what seemed like professional curiosity. During his police interview the next day, Nicholas transformed into a wall of silence. Every question met with the same 2 words: no comment. The investigating officers tried every approach: sympathy, pressure, presenting evidence. They showed him photos of the weapons, the crime scene, even the book he'd placed on his mother's body. But later, in what he perhaps thought was a private moment with a mental health nurse, the dam broke spectacularly. Nicholas didn't just confess, he bragged. He admitted he'd been planning the massacre for over a year, researching methods, selecting targets, refining his approach. He explained how he'd first tried to rob a gun dealer before turning to forgery. His original plan, he explained with disturbing pride, was even worse than what occurred. He intended to kill his family while they slept, sexually assault his sister's body, wait until 8:30 a.m., walk to school arriving by 9 a.m. when assembly ensured maximum targets, and begin his massacre. The trial revealed the full scope of Nicholas's depravity. He had been diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder, but the judge made it crystal clear. This diagnosis didn't prevent him from understanding his actions. The prosecution presented evidence that Nicholas had researched autism specifically to use as a potential defense. Millions of people live with autism without ever contemplating violence. Nicholas knew exactly what he was doing. Every search query, every note, every preparation showed careful planning and full understanding of consequences. In court, Nicholas's father Raymond created a moment that shocked everyone present. As Nicholas was led from the dock, Raymond suddenly stood and shouted, "I still love you, son. It's not your fault, okay?" before breaking down in tears. Parental love is powerful, perhaps the strongest force in human nature, but some actions are beyond forgiveness, beyond understanding, beyond any excuse that love can provide. On February 24th, 2025, Nicholas Prosper pleaded guilty to all charges: 3 counts of murder, illegal firearm possession, possession of a bladed article, and forging documents to obtain a firearm. The investigation also uncovered hundreds of indecent images of children on his phone, organised into folders with disturbing labels. Yet inexplicably, no additional charges were filed for this material, a decision that rightfully frustrated the public. March 19th, 2025. Justice arrives in a wood-panelled courtroom, but it feels insufficient. Nicholas Prosper was sentenced to life in prison with a minimum of 49 years. The judge's words were scathing, calling the crimes barbaric and beyond comprehension, but even the harshest words felt inadequate. The public outcry was immediate and fierce. This monster wanted to kill 34 people, murdered his entire family including 2 children, possessed child abuse material, and he might walk free in his 60s. The case has been referred to the Attorney General for reconsideration, with many hoping the sentence will be extended to whole life without parole. This case forces us to confront uncomfortable questions that have no easy answers. How did Nicholas forge official documents and successfully purchase a firearm in a country with some of the strictest gun laws in the world? How did his online activities go unmonitored despite being banned from multiple platforms? Where were the interventions that might have prevented this tragedy when teachers, mental health professionals, and even his own family saw warning signs? The internet gave Nicholas the tools to transform from a withdrawn teenager into a family annihilator. Every violent video, every extremist forum, every graphic image, they weren't just content to him, they were instruction manuals, training materials for his own attempt at infamy. But we need to remember this story isn't really about Nicholas Prosper. It's about Juliana Falcon, a hard-working mother who loved her children fiercely and died trying to protect others from her own son. It's about Kyle, 16 years old, passionate about football and boxing, whose friends described him as confident and welcoming, who died fighting with extraordinary bravery. It's about Jazelle, just 13, described by teachers as a beautiful soul and model pupil, whose life ended before it truly began. These 3 weren't just victims. They were real people with dreams, fears, hopes, and futures that were stolen by someone they should have been able to trust above all others. Juliana's early awakening that morning, though it cost her life, likely saved dozens of children at St. Joseph's. She's not just a victim. She's a hero who prevented an even greater tragedy, even if she never knew it. Nicholas wanted to be remembered as Britain's most notorious school shooter, to have documentaries made about him. Instead, he'll be remembered as a pathetic individual so detached from reality he believed a video game character needed his protection. He traded his family's lives for nothing. No infamy, no legendary status, just a cell where he'll rot while the world forgets his name, remembering only those he killed. The Prosper case reminds us that warning signs are often visible if we know where to look. The internet spiral, the isolation, the obsession with violence, these weren't hidden completely. They were missed, ignored, or underestimated. In our digital age, where the darkest content imaginable is just clicks away, we need better systems to identify and intervene before fascination becomes planning, and planning becomes action. 3 innocent lives were lost on September 12th, 2024. Their killer sits in prison, his grand plans reduced to nothing but the memory of senseless violence. But perhaps their story can serve as a warning, a reminder that the monsters we fear aren't always strangers lurking in shadows. Sometimes they're sitting at the dinner table planning their atrocities behind bedroom doors while their families sleep peacefully just rooms away.